What's up guys, Josh Mosman here from Motocross Action Magazine, and in this video we have our TMR KX Guru Racing 1991 Kawasaki KX500 build, and on the bike in this video is Daryl Ecklund, managing editor of Motocross Action Magazine. His first time in front of the camera in a while, and it was a lot of fun watching him get out there and have some fun on the 500 two-stroke. Riding a 500 two-stroke is like being taped to a bomb that is ready to explode. The countdown starts when the detonation sequence is triggered by the rotating crank to get the piston at top dead center. Then, with a strong, swift kick, it ignites the fuel in the combustion chamber, setting the bomb in motion. MXA has lots of seat time on 500cc two-strokes, and most of us look at the massive smoker engine and cringe before ever swinging a leg over one. The KX500 was hideous looking 30 years ago, and nope, it didn't age like fine wine. However, the vibrational roar of the 30-year-old rattletrap is still intimidating. We're not too sure why 500cc smokers got such a bad reputation. Back in the late 80s and 90s, riders like Destry Abbott, Ty Davis, and Danny Hamill raced 100 miles an hour plus through the Baja Desert on them without a fuss. Then you have motocross rock stars of Jeff Ward, Mike Kudrowski, and Mike LaRocco racing on them on Supercross tracks and making it look easy. MXA has gotten to ride many 500cc power plants throughout its 48-year history, with most of the good ones still packaged in the original equipment. The hardest 500s to ride have been the ones that have been shoehorned into new age chassis. You would think the opposite, but these new chassis were built for a purpose, and that purpose isn't to have a 30-year-old engine shoved in. There's a lot that goes into building a chassis that works with a specific engine, and when the mixture gets thrown out of whack, odd things happen. And you can be sure that none of those oddities will be of good nature. Yes, the old KX500 chassis is more than dated. Bolts fly out at regular intervals, the frame and subframe breaks every now and again, and the old dog gives you double vision from vibration. With all that said, let's get into the TMR KX Guru Racing 1991 KX500 build. This team of guys that built this KX500 have worked on many of the factory KX500s back in the day. They know how to fix its flaws and improve on many of the bike's characteristics. Many of their solutions were to update the bike with new age parts. However, that is no easy task. KX Guru Racing modified the stock swing arm to use a KX450 rear wheel and a larger 240mm KX450 rear rotor. For the suspension, KX Guru Racing made new dog bones that were Team Kawasaki spec 132.5mm. These raised the rear of the bike 10mm to place more weight on the front end to aid in cornering, and also to reduce the rate of speed at which the rear shock travels through its stroke in relation with the rear wheel travel to help reduce bucking. They ditched the stock forks and bought 2011 KX450F forks and a whole front end setup off eBay that came with the entire front brake assembly with it. Applied Racing built up some hybrid triple clamps that accommodated a KX450F front end swap while keeping the factory 22mm KX500 offset. They also found a 1994 KX500 shock body that is slightly more updated than the 1991 shock. Both the forks and shock were tuned by Racetech. KX Guru Racing makes their trademark two-piece clutch cover, which now allows access to the clutch. They also make a trick piece to replace the stock one-piece clutch arm and replaced it with a two-piece spline billet arm that gives an additional 10mm of length, reducing the amount of force required to pull the clutch in and providing more of a gradual clutch action at the lever. The clutch cables also were moved from a 90-degree aluminum sleeve to a 45-degree sleeve that just reduces the number of sharp turns heading up to the lever to also make it easier to use as well. Another trick KX Guru Racing came up with is their KIPS power valve bolt modification. The factory KX500 exhaust valve drum sits over-rotated in their normal state, which results in the auxiliary exhaust ports to be slightly open, making starting the bike slightly easier. So this eliminates that initial hesitation, resulting in a snappier throttle response on the throttle as well. As mentioned earlier, this chassis does break every now and again. KX Guru Racing took the frame and had it reinforced and strengthened in key locations with gussets, copied from the old Team Green off-road days, and a few gussets were designed and placed by KX Guru Racing themselves. To keep the rider's feet planted, custom foot peg mounts were machined so KX450 Raptor pegs could be mounted, and the rear brake lever mount was also modified for strength. For the engine, quite possibly the most experienced KX500 tuner was put on task, Tom Morgan. Tom was a factory Kawasaki mechanic back on these KX500s for Jeff Ward back in the early 90s. He started this build by rebalancing the crankshaft, porting the cylinder, and modifying the head. The head also got a very cool and convenient decompression valve that not only aids in easier starting, but reduces forces and load on the engine internals. Let's get into the fun part. How was this bike on the track? Well, if you've ever started a KX500, you know that it is no easy task. The kickback can wrench your knee in an instant. It takes a certain technique to start these bikes, which unfortunately is a lost art. TMR's decompression release was a leg saver, and with the push of a button on the head, it allowed us to start the bike without much of a sweat. On the track, our testers were surprised with how smooth the power was. It was nice to not have to hang on for dear life. The faster we went, the less the engine vibrated, and the engine loved to be short shifted and rode in the middle of the power band. It had a gentle grunt that allowed you to keep riding in a higher gear, and with its sheer power, you could be lazy and keep it in third pretty much the entire Glen Helen track, save for the long start straightaway. Even though the KX500 used a 27-year-old shock and 10-year-old forks, Racetech was able to do an amazing job balancing out this bike. The front and rear end worked in unison together, and we could hit any kicker, square edge, or jump without having to worry. Honestly, we were pretty surprised with how well it handled on the track. Many of the comments from our testers were that it was like riding a couch on wheels rather than a death trap on wheels, which was a nice surprise. The downside was that after each session on the track, something was missing, whether it were bolts or a side plate. However, we weren't super worried because it wasn't our bike. Overall, this KX500 was the most user-friendly 500cc machine we had ever ridden. The power was very manageable and smooth, and the suspension was super plush. The integration of new age technology, the years of experience from TMR and KX Guru Racing, and the suspension setting from Racetech really brought this old dog into the current decade. It was an amazing bike for what it is, and I personally had a blast watching MXA's Daryl Ecklund make that bike his own on the track and truly become one with the bike. So it was a lot of fun riding this KX Guru Racing TMR built KX500. Thank you guys for tuning into this video. We have more 500 two-stroke videos coming to our YouTube channel and our website. MotocrossActionMag.com is where you can find everything that the MXA Wrecking Crew is up to, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can stay up to date with our latest videos, as we got more cool ones coming. Thank you guys for tuning in, and if you have some more time, click these links here to see some of our recent videos.